Welcome back to the show today. We are talking about not my favorite NBA team, but the team I probably follow the closest. The Philadelphia 76ers. I transitioned about 8 years ago from being an NFL fan to an NBA fan. And since I started following the NBA again, the Philadelphia 76ers have definitely been in the news the most of any team, even the Lakers. And typically, they've been in the news for not good reason. It would seem to me that the 76ers are a cursed franchise. But why would they be cursed? What did they ever do to the basketball gods? Well, it started with a man named Sam Hinkie. Sam Hinkie was the general manager of the 76ers from 2013 to 2016. Sam Hinkie tanked that team every year. The Sixers were the worst basketball team over that period of time. His goal was to get as high of a draft pick as possible so they could accumulate players for their future. It was the long game. He was exploiting a flaw in the NBA system. The worst teams getting the best players. His motto was, trust the process. And some Sixers fans did trust the process, and they came out to watch those terrible 76ers teams. They believed in Hinkie's vision, but unfortunately, ownership of the Sixers did not. Hinkie was seemingly forced to resign in 2016. The thing is, though, Hinkie's plan was executed, but he wasn't there to see it. It was successful too. Cursed, but successful. You could argue that the process did work. So when we're talking about the curse of the Philadelphia 76ers, the first player we need to talk about is Joel Embiid. After a 19-63 season, the Philadelphia 76ers drafted Joel Embiid 3rd overall in the 2014 NBA draft. But here's the thing, Joel Embiid was out for the entire first season of his career with a foot injury. But that's not the worst part. When Joel was getting ready for his next season, he re-injured his foot and he missed the first 2 seasons of his career. A lot of people thought Joel Embiid was never going to step on an NBA court, but he did. In 2016, he was playing all-star level basketball. He was averaging 20 points a game and 8 rebounds, but he tore his meniscus that season and only ended up playing 31 games. Now, this is the weird part about the Sixers curse, is it breaks your heart twice. Because after that season, Joel Embiid literally became one of the best players in the league. And for one season, he was the best player in the league. He was an all-star for 7 straight seasons. He made all NBA teams, he made all defensive teams, and in 2023, he was the NBA MVP. So what? The Sixers never made it out of the second round of the playoffs. That's too much to ask. There are a lot of good teams in the NBA. The Sixers were at least in the mix every year. But the problem is, after Joel's MVP season, the curse came back strong. Joel Embiid was having the greatest season of all time at the start of 2023. He was averaging 34 points a game. He was averaging over a point every minute he was on the court. That hadn't been done since Wilt Chamberlain in 1963. But in January 2024, Jonathan Kuminga fell on his knee and he tore his meniscus. Since that moment, in January 2024, he's only played 33 games, and I'm talking playoff games too. But we'll see what happens with Joel this year. Maybe the curse has been lifted. But the curse of the Philadelphia 76ers reminds me of the short story of the monkey's paw, where this family gets a cursed monkey's paw and it grants them wishes. But every time it grants a wish, there's some up side effect about the wish coming true that always makes the situation a lot worse than it was. Like the family wishes for $200 and then their son falls in a meat grinder, and then a company he worked for gives them a $200 bereavement payment, and then at the end they wish for their son back and he comes back as a zombie. It's a pretty good story. So my point is, if you're a Bulls fan, for instance, your team is mid every year. You never get your heart broken. You never get your hopes dashed. The Bulls promise play-in level basketball, and that's what you get every year. You can count on it. Versus the Sixers, who felt like they were a finals contender for 6 straight years. They had a league MVP, they had 2 #1 overall picks, they signed 2 championship level coaches, they signed and traded for some of the league's biggest stars. On paper, they seemed like the front runners in the East every year. But like I said, they've never made it past the second round. So is it better to just enjoy the apathy and casual nature of being a fan of a perennially bad team? Or is it better to enjoy the thrill of believing your team can win a championship every year, only to have Kawhi Leonard make this shot over you in the second round of the playoffs? So the next part of the curse we gotta talk about is Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons, as you know, was the #1 pick of the 2016 NBA draft. He was the unanimous #1 pick too, coming out of LSU, a school that was not known for basketball. They didn't even make the NCAA tournament, nor did anyone think they were going to. It makes sense now that he chose a basketball program that wasn't going to expect him to deliver wins. Because Ben Simmons was a great player, but he had flaws. He couldn't shoot. Even in college, he was a bad shooter. He was able to dominate with size and athleticism. He was even able to dominate in the NBA with size and athleticism too. He was one of the best defenders in the league. He led the league in steals. He made an all-star team. He made 3 All-NBA teams. The Sixers were all about Ben Simmons too. Occasionally you'd hear rumors about them trading Embiid, but you'd never hear rumors about them trading Ben Simmons. They brought in guys like Robert Covington, JJ Redick, Seth Curry, guys who could shoot to make up for Ben Simmons' lack of shooting ability. But the curse of the Sixers reared its ugly head when Ben Simmons refused to dunk on Trae Young in Game 7 of the Sixers-Hawks series in 2021. He passed it to Matisse Thybulle instead because because he didn't want to have to shoot free throws. Doc Rivers, Joel Embiid, Daryl Morey, they all sold him out. Nobody backed them up. They were pissed. They blamed him for the loss, and Ben Simmons took an indignant stance. It was Ben's fault. You know, you can't blame an entire series on one play, but that was bad. It was horrible. And then after a gnarly lawsuit, Ben Simmons was traded to the Brooklyn Nets in February 2022. Now, who was Ben Simmons traded for? Ben Simmons was traded for James Harden. The Nets swapped curses with the Sixers. Both teams had bad relationships with their stars. It was a good idea because Ben Simmons hated the Sixers and he refused to play, and James Harden was pretty disappointed with what the Brooklyn Nets ended up being for him. Brooklyn's big three didn't really work out. Everyone was kind of injured all the time. They barely played any games together. Plus, Kyrie didn't want to get vaccinated, so he could only play away games. You remember that season. So the two swapped jerseys and the curse continued with James Harden. Well, not immediately. James Harden joined the team and he ended up being pretty good for them. In his only full season with the Sixers, he helped Joel get his MVP award. Harden and Embiid had the best pick and roll in the game. But when they went up against the Sixers in the Eastern Conference Finals that year, both Harden and Embiid fell apart. But unfortunately for Harden, it was a contract year. Harden shot 3 for 11 in Game 7 and he only ended up with 9 points. Now here's where it gets tense. Harden had signed a smaller deal from what he wanted the previous season. The idea being him taking a discount and then the following season he gets the big long contract that he wants. He took less money so the Sixers could sign more players to help them win. Did Harden get his bigger, longer contract?
Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of again.
Harden demanded a trade, and he got traded to the Clippers. Now, I want to talk about Jimmy Butler's tenure as a Sixer. Jimmy Butler wasn't even a member of the 76ers for a full year. He was traded from the Minnesota Timberwolves in November of 2018, after he legendarily torched the Minnesota Timberwolves starting lineup playing with the reserves, all while wearing a gold chain, Timberlands, and smoking a Black and Mild. I swear the story gets crazier every time you hear it. Jimmy's hardworking and stubborn personality was a good fit for the Philadelphia 76ers. That was the best team that Joel Embiid has ever had. Jimmy actually seemed to get along with Embiid as well, but Jimmy did not get along with head coach Brett Brown. Evidently, he didn't like his role in offense, and he spoke to Brett Brown in a disrespectful manner. Now, here's the thing. Jimmy wanted to do more pick and rolls with Embiid. Embiid didn't want to do that, and of course, Ben Simmons didn't want to do that either. Because if they're running pick and rolls, what's Ben Simmons doing? So, after the Sixers were eliminated in the playoffs...
Is this the dagger?
That's the last time I'm going to play that, I swear. Jimmy became a free agent, and the Sixers did not sign him, but they did re-sign Tobias Harris.
Tobias Harris over me?
Now, Jimmy might be right. The Sixers did sign Tobias Harris and not him. But the truth is, they chose Ben Simmons over Jimmy Butler. So speaking of Tobias Harris, the final curse of the process-era 76ers manifests with Paul George's contract signed in 2024. Paul George decided to leave the Clippers for the 76ers. Why? Because the Sixers offered him more money. They offered him a 4-year max contract at the age of 34. I would have taken it too. So I'm not going to actually blame this on the curse. I'm going to blame this on Daryl Morey's bad idea. Paul George was cursed in Los Angeles. He only played 67% of the games there, and he only played 60% of the playoffs. He's not a guy that you want to lock up a quarter of your salary cap with until the age of 38 years old. But the Sixers did it anyway, and last year, the Sixers sucked. I could read you stats and stuff, but just trust me, they sucked. They didn't make the playoffs. And Paul George sucked last year. The funny thing is, Sixers fans complained about Tobias Harris the full 5 years of his contract there.
Casual Sixers fans, they'll trade me for a crumble cookie.
I understand the complaint from Sixers fans, but in Tobias's defense, last year while the Sixers were signing Paul George, he signed with a team that did make the playoffs. He averaged 16 points a game in the playoffs, and he played 74 games. How many points did Paul George average in the playoffs last year? 0. Sixers didn't make the playoffs, remember? But he released some podcasts, stayed busy. So the way I see it, the basketball gods curse those who tank. So the Utah Jazz are all right, thank you for being here. Do me a solid, do me a favor, do me a kindness, like the video. I love you. Subscribe to the show if you like the show. There's a Patreon. It's a podcast every Saturday. It's $2, 50 cents a podcast or something like that. Be good to your mom and your dad.